So I wanted to make a video after listening to a really beneficial and informative and insightful podcast. I listened to a podcast by a man called Steve Borgman, and it's called Thrive with Asperger's and Autism, and it's extremely good quality, and it's extremely informative. So this particular episode, he was talking to a lady called Holly, and she didn't give a last name, but she said something. I mean, everything that she said was so profound and beneficial to me just to hear it phrased and explained, because a lot of times things happen and you don't realize the pattern unless someone tells you, like points it out to you. There's so many things, they just seem normal because you're only seeing yourself from your own point of view, right? And some people are more experienced with others and in research and everything, so they can point out, no, that's actually an autistic trait, and this is a benefit of it, this is the downside, and the good thing about that is your weaknesses, so you can account for them, and your good traits, and you can how to push it forward better. So that's why I like that podcast. So this lady, she made some really good points, but one particular point I wanted to talk about was that she said that autistics make decisions based on logic, and normal people make decisions more based on emotions. And then she gave some examples. And in my case, that's always been true. Something else that she pointed out was that just because, the autistic person is making a particular decision that's extremely, hard to understand or whatever, but logically it makes sense, but emotionally it's extremely painful and extremely distressing. Other people don't understand how, how can you make that decision that's so extreme, or that's so painful and difficult, but the autistic person goes for it, is because the autistic person is thinking in a different way again, and so they've reasoned it out, and for the greater good type of thing. They say, well, logically it would be more beneficial to everyone concerned if I did this, right? And even though it's painful for me and emotionally completely is gonna kill me doing it. And that's what she said. She talked about having to put her dog down or something, and even though it's painful, she put her dog down, and doesn't mean that she didn't love the dog or didn't care for the dog, but she knew that health-wise that was what's recommended, and she didn't want her dog to suffer more, and this and that, right? And then she gave the example, whereas normal people often they delay it until it's gotten to it's just too much, and then the vet says, no, you just have to put them down, and the dog's been suffering and stuff, right? So that happened to me in my childhood, actually. I had to put my cat down and I made that decision based on the vet's recommendation, because my cat got into a really bad car accident and this and that, and trying to take care of him, and then I chose to put him down because I realized this is no way to live. His body was just messed up. He needed to take medicines just to go to the washroom and things like that, and he was in pain, and he had to take, I think, some sort of painkiller, and it was just a terrible way to live, and he was just not doing well at all. So then, based on the vet's recommendation, I did go for it. And I know a lot of people might have just thought to keep the animal going and just but I just thought about it logically, but that doesn't mean that it didn't kill me emotionally. Is what I'm trying to say, is that even to outsiders it might look very robotic or very cold and heartless, but it doesn't mean that the autistic person isn't suffering or isn't aware that it's very difficult and whatever. They still do it. So it's actually a greater sacrifice, right? Whereas I feel like with normal people, like, it's more emotion based, a lot of stuff. But then what the lady Holly said, she's like, well, that makes autistic people better decision makers, and because their decisions are logic based and this and that. But I haven't found that to be the case for me. The reason being is because a lot of times, like especially interpersonal conflicts and things like that, my decisions and my actions that are based on logic, it's based on like incomplete logic, because my brain sees interpersonal interactions and like things like that very, like, I'm thinking about it systematically and long term, like this is better. Even if it's painful, I might, make myself do something because I think, well, long term this will work out better for everyone. And I just have, and I'll be crying, and I'll be like internally, like on my own, I'll be crying, and it's like super painful, super depressed, whatever, but I still go through with it because I feel like, well, that's the only, like, that's the best solution, right? But that doesn't make it a good decision, because like I said, often my information is incomplete, and I don't realize all the possibilities and outcomes that can happen, especially in social interactions or, interpersonal things, and I just don't see the solution. It's like, it's right there, but because I'm not thinking in that way, I miss it. So, even though it's logical, I'm missing the point. So that's why I feel like, even if it sounds like, oh, if everything's based on logic, then it's more rational and it's better. That doesn't mean that, that's not necessarily the case. I feel like if you're autistic, you should just suck it up and still consult people and run everything by people and tell them what you're feeling. Be like, explain to them what your logic is and run it by them, because a lot of times you'll find that even though it sounds perfectly logical, there are other options that you just weren't even aware of, because maybe of your poor theory of mind, or other things. It's a very tricky subject, but yeah, like, just because your decision is logic based doesn't make it the best decision. And also, it doesn't mean that you're not feeling the emotions and you're not being impacted by it, or yeah. So that's just another facet of the autistic experience that I wanted to share. Thank you for watching, if anyone watched.